My name is Emily, and I am 33 years old. What I am about to tell you is the story of how I achieved the greatest professional success of my life, only to have it systematically erased by my own family, leading me to expose everything. It felt like a victory stolen, a part of my identity wiped clean, but what happened next was even worse. This story is about betrayal, gaslighting, and finding the strength to fight back when everyone you thought you could trust turns against you. If you have ever felt overlooked, betrayed, or like your accomplishments were stolen, please hit that like button and tell me where you are watching from in the comments below. And please, consider subscribing for more stories like this. Growing up, my family was complicated. We weren't billionaires, but there was always money, and my parents were heavily involved in a successful consulting firm, Sterling Solutions. My father, Mr. Robert Sterling, founded it years before I was born, and my mother, Mr. Janice Sterling, joined him shortly after. My older brother, Mark, was also part of the firm, having joined right out of business school. From the outside, we were the picture of a successful, close-knit family. Inside, there was a subtle but constant undercurrent of competition, particularly between Mark and me, fueled often by my mother. Mark was always the golden child, his achievements amplified, his struggles excused. I, on the other hand, felt like I constantly had to prove myself, my successes met with faint praise or comparisons to Mark, my failures remembered indefinitely. I chose a different path initially, working for a few years at a rival firm after college, gaining experience. But eventually, the pull of the family business, and perhaps a naive hope of finally earning my parents' unequivocal respect, led me back. I joined Sterling Solutions 5 years before everything fell apart, starting as an analyst and working my way up. It wasn't easy. The standards were higher, the criticism harsher, precisely because I was family. My mother, in particular, was relentlessly critical, framing it as pushing me to be my best, but it often felt like she was determined to find fault where there was none, especially if my success seemed to overshadow Mark's in any way. Mark, for his part, wasn't overtly malicious, but he benefited from the family dynamic. He received preferential treatment, was given plum assignments, and any success he had was lauded as groundbreaking, even if it was standard industry work. Despite the difficult environment, I was good at my job. I had a knack for understanding complex client needs and developing innovative solutions. I worked harder than anyone, often staying late, taking calls on weekends, pouring my entire being into my projects. My motivation wasn't just professional ambition, it was a desperate need for validation, a desire to finally hear my parents, especially my mother, say they were genuinely proud of me, not just proud of what I did for the family business. The project that would change everything landed on my desk about 18 months before the collapse. It was a massive, high-stakes consultation for a major international corporation, a deal that could redefine Sterling Solutions and catapult its reputation globally. It involved navigating intricate legal frameworks, understanding diverse international markets, and developing a completely novel strategy for their expansion. It was daunting, complex, and exactly the kind of challenge I thrived on. Most people in the firm, including Mark and some senior partners, non-family, saw it as too risky, too complex, likely to fail. My mother actively discouraged me from taking it, suggesting it was too much for me and implying Mark was better suited for projects of this magnitude. My father, less involved in the day-to-day, gave a non-committal "do what you think is best, Emily," which in our family usually meant he was reserving judgment until he saw the outcome. I ignored the negativity. I saw the potential, and I saw a chance to prove everyone wrong. I assembled a small, dedicated team, handpicked for their expertise and willingness to put in the grueling hours required. For the next year, my life revolved around this project. I worked tirelessly, researching, strategizing, negotiating. There were countless late nights, missed family dinners, canceled social plans. I pored over data, traveled internationally for meetings, built complex financial models, and crafted presentations that distilled incredibly complex ideas into clear, persuasive arguments. My team was incredible, and their dedication was a constant source of motivation. We were a unit, bound by shared exhaustion and a burning desire to succeed against the odds. During this period, the family dynamic became even more strained. My absence from family functions was noted and passive-aggressively commented on by my mother. "Working again, Emily? Don't you think you're overdoing it?" Or, "Mark manages to balance work and family perfectly." There was no acknowledgement of the scale or importance of the project, just subtle jabs about my perceived lack of commitment to family life. When I tried to explain the significance, it was often met with a dismissive wave or a change of subject. They simply didn't seem to grasp, or perhaps didn't want to grasp, the magnitude of what I was undertaking. Mark, meanwhile, was assigned a less demanding, more public-facing project, which he handled competently and which received disproportionate attention and praise from my parents. Despite the lack of familial support, the project progressed. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, but my team and I persevered. We navigated cultural differences, legal hurdles, and unexpected market shifts. We built trust with the client, demonstrating our expertise and commitment at every step. Finally, after 13 months of intense work, we closed the deal. It was a landmark agreement, securing a long-term contract worth an estimated $1.3 billion in revenue over 10 years for Sterling Solutions. $1.3 billion. It was colossal, a game-changer for the firm. The moment I received the final confirmation from the client's CEO, I felt an overwhelming wave of relief, exhaustion, and elation. I had done it. Against the odds, against the doubts, against the subtle sabotage from within my own family. I called my father first, my voice trembling with excitement. He sounded surprised, then genuinely pleased. "Well done, Emily. That's truly remarkable." His praise was rare, and it felt incredibly validating. Next, I called my mother. Her reaction was muted. "Oh, that's nice, dear. 1.3 billion, you say? Well, Mark's project is also going very well. He just secured a new client retainer for $50,000 last week, 50,000 compared to 1.3 billion. The comparison was so starkly absurd it was almost comical, but the underlying message was clear. My achievement, no matter how massive, would still be measured against, and implicitly diminished by, Mark's, however insignificant in comparison. It was a familiar sting, but on this day, I was too high on adrenaline and success to let it fully penetrate. The immediate aftermath at Sterling Solutions was celebratory. There was a buzz in the office. Colleagues congratulated me and my team. Senior partners who had been skeptical were now effusive in their praise. There was talk of bonuses, promotions, and a major internal announcement to celebrate the achievement. I felt a sense of pride I had never experienced before. I had proved my worth, not just to my family, but to myself. However, the promised celebration and recognition started to fade. The internal announcement about the deal was delayed, then delayed again. When it finally happened, it was a generic press release, buried on the company website, mentioning the successful completion of a significant international consulting project, without highlighting the value or the specific team involved. My name was conspicuously absent from the public-facing announcement. Alarm bells started ringing. I went to Mr. Davies, the head of human resources. He was a long-time employee, seemingly neutral, but ultimately answerable to the senior partners, which included my parents and Mark, who had been promoted to a partner role during my project. I explained the situation, the lack of recognition, the delayed bonuses for my team. Mr. Davies was sympathetic but vague. He spoke about internal restructuring, revising compensation models, and managing public perception. It felt like corporate speak designed to deflect. Things escalated quickly from there. My team's bonuses, which had been discussed and implicitly promised as a percentage of the deal's first-year revenue, were drastically reduced. Not just reduced, but slashed to a fraction of what was expected, barely more than standard annual bonuses. Mine was hit hardest, proportionally. When I questioned Mr. Davies again, he produced a revised compensation structure document, backdated and signed by my mother and Mark, stating that large project bonuses were being phased out. The timing was, of course, impeccable. It was clear this was a direct response to my success. Then came the official company narrative. In internal memos and meetings, the international deal was increasingly referred to in generic terms. The scale was rarely mentioned. When it was attributed to Sterling Solutions' strategic vision, or the collective efforts of the firm. My role was minimized. I was described as part of the project team, never the leader, never the driving force. Credit started to quietly shift. Mark began mentioning the international success in his internal presentations, implying his involvement was significant, referencing synergies with my recent client acquisition, the $50,000 retainer. My mother actively reinforced this narrative, praising Mark's strategic insights that supposedly guided the international team. It was soul-crushing. I had poured everything into this, achieved something monumental, and my own family was systematically erasing my contribution. It wasn't just about the money or the title, it was about the validation, the recognition for years of hard work and proving myself. It felt like they were taking a part of my identity and making it disappear. I tried talking to my father again, but he seemed to be avoiding the issue, mumbling about internal politics and just focusing on the next project. He was either complicit or unwilling to confront my mother and Mark. The gaslighting intensified. When I brought up specific promises or discussions about my role and the deal's value, my mother would furrow her brow, look genuinely confused, and say things like, "Emily, I think you're misremembering. That project was a team effort, certainly, but the numbers you're quoting seem inflated. Are you sure you're not getting carried away?" Mark would chime in with subtle agreement. "Yeah, maybe you misunderstood. Projects this size are always a company-wide win, not just one person." They were rewriting history in real time, making me doubt my own memory, my own reality. I felt increasingly isolated and paranoid. Was I going crazy? Was I overreacting? But the evidence was there. The reduced bonuses, the absent name on announcements, the twisted narrative in meetings. I started documenting everything. I saved every email, every memo, every communication related to the international project, the bonus discussions, and the subsequent downplaying of my role. I started taking notes on conversations, detailing who said what and when. The final straw came during a company-wide town hall meeting. The CEO, a non-family member, but someone who relied heavily on my parents' input, was giving an overview of the firm's performance. He highlighted key achievements of the past year. He mentioned the international deal, finally stating the $1.3 billion figure. My heart leaped. Maybe, just maybe, they were going to give credit where it was due. But then, he continued, this incredible success was the result of exceptional teamwork and the strategic guidance provided by our senior partners, particularly Mr. Mark Sterling, who spearheaded the integration efforts and ensured seamless execution. He then called Mark up to the stage for a special acknowledgement and standing ovation. I sat there, stunned. My stomach churned. Spearheaded the integration efforts? Mark had attended maybe 3 meetings related to the project, offering generic platitudes. I had spearheaded the entire project, from conception to closing. The sheer audacity of it, the public theft of my victory, in front of the entire company, orchestrated by my own family. It was unbearable. I walked out of the town hall meeting. I didn't say a word to anyone. I went back to my office, closed the door, and just sat in the silence, the buzzing in my ears louder than any applause Mark was receiving. The years of feeling undervalued, the constant criticism, the blatant favoritism towards Mark, it all culminated in that moment of ultimate betrayal. They didn't just minimize my achievement, they gave it to him. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The desperate need for their approval, the yearning for validation, evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They wanted to erase me? Fine. But they wouldn't get away with it. I would ensure that the truth, my truth, was seen. I spent the next few days meticulously going through all the documents I had saved. Emails detailing my negotiations with the client CEO, project proposals I authored, internal communications where I was clearly referred to as the project lead, bonus structure discussions from before the deal closed, performance reviews from senior partners praising my work on the project, financial models I built, legal documents I navigated. And critically, I found emails between my mother, Mark, and Mr. Davies from HR discussing how to manage the optics around the international deal, how to realign internal credit, and explicitly talking about revising my bonus structure and public recognition after the deal was secured. There were chilling exchanges where they discussed how my success might unbalance the internal hierarchy and how Mark needed to be positioned as the key figure for future opportunities. It wasn't just downplaying. It was a deliberate, malicious campaign to steal my victory. The depth of the betrayal was staggering. It wasn't just professional, it was personal. My own mother, the woman who was supposed to support and nurture me, was actively working to dismantle my success and hand it to my brother. Mark, who I had shared a childhood with, was complicit, benefiting from the lie. I knew I couldn't just present this evidence internally. They controlled HR, they controlled the narrative, they controlled the power structure. They would bury it, twist it, accuse me of fabrication, and likely fire me on the spot for attempting to expose them. I needed to go outside the system they controlled. I thought about what to do. A lawsuit? Too long, too expensive, too draining. Going to the press? Maybe, but potentially damaging to my own reputation and the firm's, which still, despite everything, represented years of my father's life's work. Then it hit me. The emails. The raw, unfiltered communication. They were the irrefutable proof. I decided to leak them, not to the press initially, but internally, to everyone in the company. Let them see the truth. Let them see what kind of people were running the firm, what they did to their own family, to an employee who had brought them unprecedented success. It was a risky move, potentially career-ending, but the need for justice, for validation, for simply saying this is what happened and they lied, was overpowering. I carefully organized the most damning emails, compiled them into a single file, and wrote a brief, factual explanation of what they revealed. The project's value, my role, and the coordinated effort to erase my contribution and credit Mark. I attached the file to an email and sent it to the entire company distribution list. Every employee, from the most junior analyst to the CEO, received it. I didn't use my company email address. I used a secure, anonymous account I had set up specifically for this purpose. The moment I hit send, my hands were shaking. There was a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I knew I had just set off a bomb. My time at Sterling Solutions was likely over, but I no longer cared. My reputation within the company was already being systematically destroyed by my family. At least this way, everyone would know why. Chaos erupted almost immediately. My phone started ringing incessantly, calls from colleagues, friends within the company, even some senior partners who weren't in the loop. The company email system was flooded. People were shocked, angry, some supportive, some scared. The internal narrative that had been carefully constructed by my family was shattered in an instant. I stayed away from the office that day. I couldn't face anyone, especially not my family. I heard snippets from frantic phone calls and texts. Emergency meetings were being called. My mother was reportedly screaming. Mark was denying everything. Mr. Davies was scrambling. My mother called me, her voice shaking with rage. "Emily, what have you done? Have you lost your mind? This is corporate espionage. You'll ruin us. You'll ruin the company. Your father is devastated." She didn't express any concern for me, any acknowledgement of my pain or the injustice I had suffered. It was all about the damage control, the threat to their carefully constructed facade. Ruin us. I finally found my voice, cold and steady despite the tremor in my hands. You ruined me. You stole my work. You lied. You manipulated. You erased my victory and gave it to Mark. You didn't just disrespect me professionally. You betrayed me as your daughter. She didn't respond directly to my accusations. Instead, she launched into a tirade about loyalty, about family, about how I was ungrateful and selfish for causing such disruption. She accused me of being jealous of Mark, of fabricating lies because I couldn't handle his success. It was the same old script, the same gaslighting, but now I had the proof in everyone's inbox. It had no power over me anymore. "The emails speak for themselves, Mother," I said, my voice firm. "Everyone has seen them. They know the truth. The truth, she shrieked. This isn't the truth. This is a distorted pack of lies. You've misinterpreted everything. You're unstable, Emily. You need help. No, I countered. I needed my family to be proud of me, to support me, not steal from me. You made your choice. I hung up the phone. It was the first time I had ever hung up on her. It felt incredibly difficult and incredibly liberating, all at once. Mark also called, sounding less angry and more panicked. He tried to downplay everything, claiming the emails were taken out of context and that it was just standard corporate discussion about credit allocation. He even had the nerve to say, "Come on, Em, we're family. We can work this out. Don't blow this up." Family? I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping me. Is that what you call lying, manipulating, and taking credit for my billion-dollar deal? Is that your definition of family? He mumbled something about needing to go and ended the call quickly. My father never called directly after the leak. He sent a brief, heartbroken text message. Emily, why? How could you do this to the family? There was no mention of the emails, no question about whether my accusations were true, just a focus on the disruption I had caused to the family unit, not the injustice I had suffered. It confirmed my deepest fear. He was prioritizing the family's image and his wife's machinations over his own daughter's truth and well-being. The fallout within Sterling Solutions was immense. An internal investigation was launched, but it was clearly performative at first, led by Mr. Davies, whose own emails were part of the leak. However, enough non-family senior partners and employees were outraged by the blatant corruption and nepotism that they pushed for a more serious inquiry. The emails were undeniable. Mr. Davies was the first to go. He was quietly terminated, citing restructuring. My mother took a leave of absence, which everyone knew was forced. Mark was demoted from partner, retaining a role but stripped of real authority and sidelined from major projects. The company's reputation was damaged, although the scale of the international deal was too significant to be completely overshadowed by the scandal. It became an open secret. The billion-dollar deal was Emily Sterling's achievement, and her family tried to steal it. As for me, I was never officially fired. I resigned the day after the leak, before they could make the move. I sent a concise, professional email stating I was leaving to pursue other opportunities, effective immediately. There was no point in staying. The environment was toxic beyond repair. Leaving Sterling Solutions was incredibly hard. It wasn't just a job, it was the family business, a place I had invested so much of myself into, both professionally and emotionally. It represented a lifetime of striving for acceptance and validation from my parents. Walking away felt like severing a limb, painful but necessary for survival. The relationships with my mother and Mark were effectively over. My mother continued to see me as the villain, the one who had betrayed the family. She would occasionally send angry or passive-aggressive texts filled with blame and zero accountability for her actions. I stopped responding. Mark was quieter, sometimes reaching out with awkward, half-hearted attempts to reconnect that felt more like checking the temperature than genuine remorse. I kept responses brief and distant. The bond was broken. My father. That was perhaps the most painful part. He was caught in the middle, unwilling or unable to fully condemn his wife and son, but also seemingly struggling with the reality of their actions and the consequences for me. We spoke occasionally, stilted conversations about surface-level things. The deep connection we once had, the shared history, was overshadowed by the unspoken betrayal and the silence around it. He never explicitly apologized for his inaction or for their behavior. In the immediate aftermath, I felt a mixture of relief and profound sadness. The truth was out. I had stood up for myself, but the cost was the disintegration of my family as I knew it. There were days when the weight of it was crushing, the loneliness immense. I questioned if it was worth it, if the validation of strangers, collegially the employees who saw the emails, could ever replace the love and acceptance of family. But then I would remember the town hall meeting, the deliberate lies, the feeling of being erased, and I knew I had made the only choice I could live with. My self-respect was worth more than their approval. Building a new life and career wasn't easy. The scandal, while not making major national news headlines, was well known within the industry circles Sterling Solutions operated in. Some companies were hesitant to hire me, wary of the drama or fearing I was a troublemaker, but others, particularly those who valued integrity and recognized the scale of the deal I had closed, saw my value. They saw someone who was not only incredibly capable, but also had the courage to stand up for what was right, even at great personal cost. I ended up joining a competitor firm, one with a very different culture, transparent, collaborative, and where meritocracy was genuinely valued. I started in a slightly lower position than I probably could have commanded based on my experience, but I needed to prove myself again in a new environment, away from the shadow of my family. And prove myself I did. Without the constant family drama and subtle sabotage, I thrived. My skills were recognized, my contributions were valued, and I was given opportunities to lead significant projects. I was promoted within a year, and again 18 months after that. The process of healing went beyond just finding a new job. I sought therapy to process the years of emotional manipulation, the gaslighting, and the trauma of the betrayal. I learned about setting boundaries, about recognizing toxic patterns, and about detaching my self-worth from external validation, especially from family members who were incapable of providing it healthily. I started building a new support system. Friends who became like family, colleagues who respected and supported me. I reconnected with distant relatives who understood the complexities of my immediate family dynamic and offered unconditional support. I learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up for you, who respects you, and who celebrates your successes genuinely. Over time, the intense pain lessened, replaced by a dull ache, like a chronic injury that occasionally flares up. I accepted that my relationship with my mother and Mark would likely never be restored to what it should have been. We existed in a state of polite, distant non-communication, punctuated by awkward encounters at unavoidable family gatherings, which I attended less and less. My father and I slowly, tentatively began to rebuild something. It wasn't the same closeness, and there was still a significant elephant in the room: his failure to protect me or fully acknowledge the wrongness of my mother and Mark's actions. But he made an effort, initiated contact more, and gradually seemed to accept the new reality of our fractured family. He never stopped loving me, I knew that, but his inability to stand up to the toxic dynamics had caused damage that couldn't be easily repaired. The company, Sterling Solutions, continued to operate, but it never quite recovered its previous standing. The scandal had highlighted internal issues that couldn't be ignored. The atmosphere shifted, trust was eroded, and some key talent left in the aftermath. My father eventually retired, and the leadership transitioned fully to non-family members, a change necessitated by the events. Looking back, I don't regret leaking the emails. It was a desperate act born of pain and necessity, but it was also an act of reclaiming my truth. It prevented my story from being completely erased and served as a painful but necessary catalyst for me to extract myself from a toxic environment. It forced me to confront the reality of my family relationships and build a life based on authenticity and self-respect, rather than a constant pursuit of approval that would never come. The $1.3 billion deal became a footnote in Sterling Solutions' history, its true origins known by those who needed to know, but its official credit distorted. For me, it became something else entirely. It wasn't just a professional achievement. It was a symbol of my strength, my capability, and my resilience in the face of immense pressure and betrayal. It was the catalyst that forced me to break free and build my own success, on my own terms, where my victories could never be erased again. It's been several years now. I am thriving in my career, in a place where I am valued and respected. My personal life is fulfilling, filled with genuine connections. The scar from the betrayal remains, a reminder of how painful family dynamics can be, but also of how strong I am. I learned that protecting your peace and your truth is paramount, even when it means confronting the people closest to you. Navigating family conflict, especially when it involves betrayal and manipulation, is incredibly difficult. It challenges your sense of self, your trust in others, and your place in the world. But it also forces you to find your voice, to stand up for yourself, and to define your own worth independent of others' opinions or actions. My story is a testament to the fact that you don't have to let others define you or your accomplishments. You have the power to speak your truth, even when it's terrifying, and even when it means changing the course of your life and relationships forever. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you in any way, if you've faced similar struggles with family or professional betrayal, please share your experience in the comments below. Let's build a community of support and understanding. If you haven't already, please hit that like button to show your support, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more stories about overcoming challenges and finding your strength. Remember, your truth matters and you are stronger than you think.